Hi guys, this video has the objective to make you understand and improve your descent management and of course the profile recovery in various scenarios. Created one with an ATC constraint in Bologna, and we will discuss how to manage it during the briefing stage and how to perform the recovery once it actually happens basically. I will show you also how to deal with a shortcut given at various levels. So one above level 100, so basically it's going to be around level 200, 250. A slightly lower level afterwards between level 100 and 160, and the recovery of the profile when you receive a shortcut below level 100. We will learn how to deal with this energy management and profile recovery. Lastly, we'll demonstrate the intercepting the GLIDESLOPE from above. Before we start all this, I will like to insert a disclaimer. This is just a demonstration video, homemade with a very good friend of mine. It's in no way approved by the training department, and if you see any difference between the simulator and the manual, please follow the manual. This is simply an FS 2020 PMDG. So the physics behind it also might not reflect the real aircraft. I tried my best to put you in a situation where it can reflect the real aircraft, but it's not really the same. Nonetheless, it will help you out at least with your actions. Also differences, we don't have a VNAV button in this FMC. It's the older model. Instead, we will find a climb, cruise, and descent page. It's the same thing as pressing 3 times, basically, the VNAV button on our FMC. Last difference that I've noticed, we don't have alt hold when using VNAV. We're going to have an FMA called VNAV alt. This is not in our FMC, and it's not in our FMA. It's not in our software. Enjoy. We're now in the cruise. We're proceeding towards Lomed. We're doing an approach in Bologna. And now we'll talk about, first of all, the energy management, so the descent management. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in plan mode, and we're going to see what we think that we will fly. So for example, the route, the arrival would take us Lomed, Papa Echo 556, 544, LVEB 532, and so on. We're not going to do all this. Most likely ATC will give us a shortcut from Lomed to this point right here, which is Papa Echo 525, and then MDUT. I'm going to join the dots here. So what we're going to do is Papa Echo 525 after Lomed, and then MDUT. Now we're going to see the altitude that wants us to be over Lomed. That's 245 knots, flight level 127 hard basically. So in a normal scenario, what I will do, I will check the altitude here, that's 156. So I will insert manually 127 or below. Of course, you can also put 130 below. You'll execute, and of course it will tell you reset MCP altitude because we were close by. But this is high energy prevention training basically. So this is what we will do normally. In Bologna, we know that the altitude restriction is at level 160. This is what ATC will expect us to fly. If we only put this, we already checked that we're going to be high. So what we will do is we're going to put also speed restriction over Lomed, 210 knots or below, in order to have the energy later on to use it and descend and recover the path basically. So now I'll resume the simulation, go back to VNAV, And now ATC gives us a descent. You can descend to level 340. So I set it, I press altitude intervent. Now it's going to maintain 1,000 feet a minute. We're basically now approaching the path, and the aircraft is descending at 1,000 feet a minute up until it catches the path, which is now, and then it's going to start following the path back down. But this is a step descent, so what we will have to do is press vertical speed and reduce the rate of descent to 1,000 feet a minute. What we will do also, the thrust comes in. We don't want the thrust coming in during the descent, so we're going to reduce the speed initially to 220 knots, and then we will check the minimum clean speed. It's flaps 40 speed plus 70, so in this case it will be 204. I can put any speed down to 204, of course not at 350, please don't do it. First speed that I would put is 220. Below level 200 you can also put the up speed. Why below level 200? Because that's when the up speed will start popping up on your speed tape. So now we're getting high on the path, but the thrust lever is closed, as you can see, because I've reduced my speed. So this is to show you that once we get a lower altitude, I'll pretend now that we're going to get a level 260, for example. Since we didn't put any thrust, the equilibrium of altitude and speed was maintained. So now that I have alt acquire, I'm gonna put a new altitude, 260, I'll press level change, and then I'm gonna go back to 245 knots, which was our initial existing speed. The thrust didn't come in, the thrust is still closed, we didn't waste any energy, there was a turbulence there, and now we're gonna recover the path, and once we are recovering the path, we can go back to VNAV. VNAV speed will indicate first, catching the path will indicate VNAV path. So now we're on the path, we're on VNAV path. Now we'll show you what will happen. I'll pretend now I'm gonna level off a level 300. What will happen if you press VS like you correctly would with the step descent SOP. You put VS 2000, for example, but the thrust lever in this case came in. Even for a second, if the thrust lever comes in, you're gonna disrupt the equilibrium between speed and altitude. Now it's still at 2 to go, I have 2000, I'm following my SOP. Now I'm gonna put 1,000 feet a minute in the MCP. But again, I forgot my thrust. The thrust is in. The thrust keeps coming. And now it still tells me that I'm on profile because the 2000 helped out quite a bit. But now as we insert 1000 feet a minute, we're gonna start losing the path. So as you can see now, we're in a situation where there is too much energy inside. In this case, kinetic and chemical energy basically is the engines. So now if we're gonna get a lower altitude, now I'm gonna go back to level 260. We're gonna do exactly as we did before, and before worked out perfectly, but this time I press level change. As you can see, we already have the speed, the path is below us, and what we're going to do is basically gonna parallel the path all the way down. Since we changed the equilibrium by increasing the thrust, the only thing to do is now increase the speed into the FMC and into the MCP. We're gonna put 250 knots. Let's see if it works out. So now it's gonna pitch down to get 250 knots. It's getting back on the path. I go back to VNAV and we have VNAV path. So guys, remember, every time you're in vertical speed, reduce your airspeed. Vertical speed and then speed back. Speed back. Initially I put 220 knots. Don't put the off speed yet at this altitude, but every time you're in vertical speed, reduce your airspeed in order to save the energy. Okay? So now let's pretend that we're gonna direct. So as you can see here, what we can get maybe from the ATC is Papa Echo 556. I'll just pretend, okay, that we're gonna get a direct. It's not gonna happen in real life in Bologna. So fly direct to Papa Echo 556. Pilot monitoring response, preset Papa Echo 556. Pilot flying does not wait for the pilot monitoring to execute. You can press level change. So in this case we had 245 knots. I'll go back to VNAV just to show you. So let's say that I'm on VNAV. I get a direct, I go level change. Pilot monitoring executes the point and I assess the path. I anticipated the shortcut basically with the pilot flying. Now we get another shortcut. For example, I'm gonna go direct to MDUD, which is the final. What is pilot flying going to do? Because if you're just looking here, we're 600 feet low, below the path, so we don't need to descend. But at the moment that we're going to execute the point, we're going to end up quite high. I will show you. So execute. As you can see, we're 3,000 feet high. So what could we have done? So I'm going to reinsert real quick the telemetry mic arrival in Bologna. And I'm going to go back to Papa Echo 556, and then magically I'm back on slightly below the path. So this is the situation that we are. We're in VNAV, LNAV, we're getting a shortcut. ATC tells you fly direct to MDUD. So I put MDUD on top and I put it here, and this will be done from this FMC, of course. But what can you do to anticipate this? So you go level change, use the speed brake, and then I'm still waiting for the pilot flying to execute the point. So I tell you execute, but in the meantime, I already am prepared with speed brake. And I can also think of already increasing the speed because I know this is a big shortcut. So by the time pilot monitoring executes, LNAV available, LNAV, you're not as startled anymore that you are 3,200 feet high. So you put a speed here in this on the MCP, you put it also in the FMC. 290 knots, you execute, and then you check, you assess the situation. You can go back to VNAV in this situation. I will explain later on why you can go back to VNAV, and I believe is the most appropriate method at this stage. And then once you're on path, only once you're on path, you can stow the speed brake. So why do we go back to VNAV? Let me demonstrate it to you. So I'll pause the simulator, and I'm gonna put again departure arrival, let's whatever, and arrival Bologna telemetry mic. Let's Zulu output. I'll execute. I'll go back towards Lomet, and I'm gonna pretend now to be okay. Resume the simulation. Now I'm gonna put myself high again. So what I would do basically, I climb back up to 220, I'll press level change, and I'm gonna go back to econ speed. Now, why we're going back to VNAV? I'll try to explain you why. Because, for example, in LOMED, we have a speed restriction of 220 knots or below. Okay? So, if you just, I'm gonna go back to 245 knots, just pretend that is the speed that we're going on to towards the descent. So we'll climb back up to level 220. As you can see here, a diesel point pops up. That diesel point is for the 220 knots or below over LOMED. So now we're going back, try to be high, pretending to be high again. ATC is keeping us high, level 220. As you can see, the path now is coming. Of course, this is just a simulation and pretending to be high again. And once I'm on leveled, yeah, again, go back to VNAV. That's the message that we don't have VNAV alt. We're going to have VNAV path in this case. So guys, let's say that I'm high enough now. As we said before, high on the profile, we're above level 100. I would say above level 150. We get at lower altitude, we got level 160. So 160 is set, we'll go level change first. The aircraft will start pitching down, we'll prioritize getting back on the path. As you can see, we're 2,000 feet high, and then, as you would, speed brake. And the question is now, will you increase the speed to recover this path, or will you leave it at 250? So what I do is I check what altitude I am. Yeah, I'm quite high. I can still use 10,000, actually 11,400 feet now to 10,000 to increase the speed. But we have a speed restriction and limit. So that's it. What we will do basically is go back to VNAV. We cannot do anything else to recover this path apart from maybe just slightly increase the speed. But it'll be useless because the more increase the speed at this stage, a few miles from the diesel point, as you can see here, we're only 9 miles to the diesel point. It's most effective to use speed brake. Otherwise, we will have to increase the speed to 300 knots, and the FMC will tell you, hey, you gotta slow down right now. So you never actually slow down, and you never actually accelerated. So we stay at econ, and the good thing of VNAV, what it will do, at the diesel point, as soon as we are over the diesel point, the aircraft will start slowing down. The other advantage of VNAV, if for example we had an altitude restriction of 170 or above here over LOMED, it will cover for you, basically will help you out. Now, just for the sake of the exercise, I will stop the speed brake just to show you what the aircraft is going to do. It's on VNAV speed, as you can see here. Of course, you wouldn't start a speed brake up until you are on path, but I just wanted to show you the logic of VNAV. And now we're at the diesel point, and at the diesel point, the aircraft will start to slow down. Because VNAV will cover you, will protect you for the speed and altitude restriction. So that is why it's preferable, once you have everything out, you're gonna hear me saying this phrase a lot. Everything out, I mean speed brake and the speed, and appropriate speed for the profile recovery in that situation. Okay, now let's pretend, now let's say the scenario is completed, and now we're gonna get another direct. But this, I'm just gonna put it on top. I'm not gonna execute. ATC will tell you, descend to level 110 due to radar minima, fly LOMED, Papa Echo 525. So as part of flying, I will select 110, I'll press level change first, pilot monitoring in the meantime will execute the point, sorry, flight direct to MDUD. So pilot monitoring executed the point. As you can see, we're high, so we already anticipated with the level change, We deploy the speed brake, and now we're descending to level 110. What can we do? Let's think again. Can we increase the speed? Yeah, we could, but we're stopped at level 110. We have only 5,000 feet to go. So we can increase the speed, but in this case, the best thing, what I will do, is I'm going to go vertical speed, and I can put 3,000, and keep the speed back to 220 knots. So in this case, we're not going to exaggerate with the rate of descent. It's still going to be 3,000. Speed brake is out. I have 3 to go, and I have 3,000 feet a minute. And then at 2 to go, I'm going to go 2,000, and at 1 to go, 1,000. So now it's 2 to go. I'll put 2,000 feet a minute. Speed brake is still out. The speed is in control. And as you can see now below level 200, we have the up speed as well. So we can go back down to, we saw it earlier, flaps 40 speed is 133 plus 70, 203. So we can go back to 203 knots here in the MCP. And as you can see, is the up speed. Now it's the 1 to go, and I'm going to go back to 1,000 feet a minute. The speed is still under control. As you can see, we didn't accelerate much because we have the speed brake out. And now ATC will tell you, okay, now you're clear to descend to 5,000 feet on the QNH local. So you set the QNH. After you set the QNH, you do all the correct callouts. You think again, can I accelerate? Of course you can. To what? To 50 knots, because we're limited now to 250 below 100. So we'll press again, level change, 250 knots. Speed brake is still out. And we assess again the situation. We're recovering the path. Of course, we do the 10 checks now. But of course, we cannot accelerate more than 250 knots. This is the maximum that we can do. But as you can see, we're nicely recovering the path. And once we have everything out, again, speed brake at an appropriate speed, we will go back to VNAV. Because this will protect us for any altitude or speed restriction that we will encounter throughout the approach in our star. Now, let's pretend that ATC tells us, amendment to my previous, you're not clear for the approach, we're going to turn left, heading 320. Heading select, heading 320. What does this mean? This means we're now number 2 for the approach. 3, 4, the airport is closed, we don't know. Of course, we're not going to fly again to MDOT, so we can store a speed brake, and then we can go back to vertical speed, and assess the situation. Let's pretend that the heading is 300 degrees. So what I'm doing now, I'm checking the altitude versus distance. We're going to do a video later on for the altitude versus distance. So I can see that I'm going to go too much away from it. So I can go VS 1,000 feet a minute. A proactive pilot monitoring will keep on updating the FMC for you. So for example, I'll just do this just to have an appropriate path. What I'm going to do now with the VS, I'm going to fly an halfway between the VNAV path and what I think I'm going to fly. For example, I can expect we're going to get a direct to here and then direct to MDOT. So if we get a direct now to MDOT, we're going to be high, 1,090 feet high. But if we're going to do this and then this, we're going to be low, guys. So that's why I'm on VS. Now let's pretend, again, ATC tells us, okay, you're now clear back to direct to MDOT and clear for the approach. Descend to 2,000 feet, clear for the approach. So what my eyes goes here, I press level change, I call execute, and then I assess the path. Of course, LNAV available, LNAV, I'm assessing the path. I'm slightly high, of course, for this much, I can just use a bit of speed brake. And I have everything out. I go back to VNAV, VNAV path, once I'm on path, I again store a speed brake. Now what I'm going to do now is do some calculation. So I check my 3 times the altitude. Let's think 5,000 feet. Multiply by 3 is 15, plus 5 to decelerate, that's 20. I need to see 20 here in my progress page, and I know for sure that I will be on path. If I see any other number, I'm not going to be on path, of course. We have to include also the tailwind. In this case is 8, let's consider 10, so let's say 1 mile more. So we need 21 miles, 5 by 3, 15, plus 5 to decelerate, plus 1 to decel, plus 1 for the wind, 21. And magically, 5,021. So we know we're exactly on path. Back again here, we're trying to do now an approach into Cagliari. We're simulate a couple of things. We're gonna try again the INRG. In this case, it's management, it's not prevention, because we pretend that we get an unexpected shortcut. So we learned how to manage it. We all know it by now. Now we'll try to manage an high energy, basically. Not expected. For example, now ETC magically is going to keep us at level 300. Now it's 5 miles to top of descent. I ask for descent. We get a message, reset MCP altitude. We'll clear that after being acknowledged. I ask for descent and ETC tells you negativity to traffic below. So now it tells me I'll give you descent in 30 seconds. So 30 seconds, I already know that I'm going to be high. So my mind goes already in what are my action going to be the moment that I get a descent. So it depends all in the altitude that they give me. If they give me a good altitude, for example, they give me descent to flight level 200, descent to flight level 200, then I can use all my speed. If we get level 280, on the other hand, that's a step descent. So as we saw before, we will have to go vertical speed. So we'll try now first with descent to level 280. So I'm going to put level 280. I'll go vertical speed. And I'm going to put 2000. And what did we say about the speed when we use vertical speed? The speed goes back. Initially, we put speed 220 knots. Now I want to go, since they told me we have traffic, I'm going to go back to 1,000 feet a minute. The speed stays back. So now, once we're going to get a better descent, we can go back to VNAV. But initially, as we said, level change. But now I'm going to pretend that they're going to keep us even higher. So as you can see the profile, we're starting to lose it. 1,000 feet a minute, 245 knots with the speed back, but the thruster close. Let's pretend we have traffic crossing here. So now I will show you, demonstrate you the action when we're going to get a further descent. So I'll let it go to Alt Acquire and Alt Hold. And now I'll show you what will happen if the thrust comes in. I showed you so far A proactive pilot keep the thrust lever closed by keeping the speed window low to 20 knots. But let's say that now the thrust lever comes in not because of our fault, just because ATC doesn't make us descend. So we keep the speed to 220, and the thrust lever, unfortunately, they will have to come on. But now we're disrupting the equilibrium between altitude and airspeed. As I told you, it has to be always in equilibrium. If we increase this one, we have to decrease this one. Now, when we can have a lower altitude, we can increase the speed in order to recover the path. In the meantime, now we're at 1,500 feet low. So now ATC tells us descend to level 200. So I'm going to select 200. I'll press level change. I assess my situation. I have 8,000 feet to go. So I can, of course, accelerate back to 270 knots. I put 270 knots here in the FMC. Execute. Assess the path. That's a bit too much. So we can go, let's try 255. 255, now we have the reason why we reduce the speed, because we can use all the speed tape in order to go back to the speed, and then back to the path, back to VNAV, and the profile will be recovered with VNAV path. Now again, I'll pretend another level off, so I'll put 250. So now I'm gonna keep the thrust in, basically. I will show you. The thrust is in. Again, I will have to change something. Now I have speed 255. The thrust came in. I didn't close the thrust by reducing the airspeed. That's what I mean by keeping the thrust lever closed. It basically means reducing the airspeed. I let it level off. Thrust comes in, 80%. And now we're going to go back to the descent to level, let's say 220. Now I realize I'm high, I go level change. So what I will do, again, increase the speed. Because we disrupted the equilibrium because this damn thrust lever came out. So you put 265 here on the speed. Assess the situation again. So now we have only 15 knots because 250 to 265 is 15 knots. Looks like we're recovering the path. In the meantime, I can go back to VNAV. Same VNAV speed. What I could do, instead of using the speed brake for only 600 feet high, maybe increase 5 knots more. And we can put 270 knots. Bearing in mind that is 220, so by now we have to go vertical speed. But now we're going to be more proactive pilots. We reduce the speed right away to our up speed. As I told you, is this speed, flaps 40 plus 70, so is 203. 210, good enough, is above the up speed. 1 to go, 1,000 feet a minute. Feet a minute. The speed goes back. The thrust levers stay closed. We're not adding any energy to our approach. So now we're at this situation, and ATC tells us fly direct to Echo 503, descend to level 140. So as pilot flying, I set level 140, and it looks like I'm on path, but I'm getting a shortcut because I'm supposed to do all this, but I'm going to this point right here, just to show you, 503 is here. So I know it's a shortcut. So instead of waiting for the pilot monitoring to execute the point, you go level change, you deploy the speed brake, you increase back the speed. Initially, the existing speed that you had in the FMC was 270, I believe. So we have 270 knots, level change. In the meantime, the pilot monitoring will execute the point for you, assess the situation. Damn, we're 8,000 feet high, but we have anticipated it. Remember, in this situation, every second counts. So the quicker you are in increasing the speed in this situation, the better it is. So we're 2,700 feet high. 180 level. So now ATC tells us you can descend to level 100. And now I start making my calculation. I have everything out, VNAV. Can we increase the speed even more? Yes, we can. We're clear to level 100, we have 7,000 feet to go. I never go more than 320 knots. In this case, maybe you can go 310. 310, the speed goes automatically to 310. Let's see if we're gonna be enough to recover the path. The speed brake is out. The reason why we stay in VNAV, I explained to you before, if we're still high at level 100, the aircraft will slow it down, and I will demonstrate it again now. So I on purposely slow the speed brake. I want to stay high, and I want to show you what VNAV will do once approaching level 100. So the aircraft will slow down. VNAV speed, of course the speed brake will be out. I cannot stress it enough, but this is just a simulation. I just want to show you what VNAV will do. So as you can see now, this is the diesel point. This dot here is the initial descent point from 310, the speed that we have in the FMC, to 250. We're going to start here. We're going to slow it down here. Now we're going to talk about the gates. The next gate will be 35 miles at 10,000 feet. Why 35? Because 10,000 multiplied by 3 is 30, plus 5 to decelerate, because at level 100 you must be at 250 knots. As you can see now, we started our decel, we passed our decel point. The aircraft will start to decel. It's not going to care about the path, it's just going to care about the speed restriction that we have inserted here. That's why I always recommend to go back to VNAV. Although this is a technique, I cannot stress it enough, this is just my technique. I personally use this method. After having everything out, as I showed you before, I go back to VNAV. At least I'm protected by the speed. Maybe I have another speed restriction. Maybe there is a waypoint here with another speed restriction. So let's pretend that now ATC will still keep us high. And on top of that, we're going to get a shortcut, which is the worst case scenario. Of course, we also have the opportunity of not accepting it, but we will take the chance to demonstrate the intercepting GLIDESLOPE from above. As you can see now, we're approaching level 100. 250 knots is coming. Although I'm still high, I know, the aircraft knows it's on VNAV speed, because here should read VNAV path at all times, basically, when we're in idle descent. Now, my first gate, as I told you guys, was at level 100, plus 5 to decelerate. So 30 plus 5 to decelerate, that's 35. I need 36 miles. Now I go my progress page, and we check at level 100, exactly level 100, how many miles we have. What I will do is I will reduce the airspeed for the same reason as before. Have all the margin that I have when I'm going to get a lower altitude. So now ATC tells me descend to 6,000 feet onto the QNH 1027. You set the QNH, level change, assess the situation. Can I accelerate? Yes. You can accelerate back to 250 knots, as I'm doing now. And also I can use speed brake. So I'm deploying the speed brake, thrust lever stayed closed, and I'm going to try to recover this path. So crossing level 100 now, 31 miles. We said that we needed 36, but it's pretty accurate, it's 1700. In the real aircraft, it works like a charm, the 3 times the altitude. Remember to add or decrease also for the, so you add one number for the tailwind and you decrease it for the headwind, every 10 knots, 1 mile. So now, as we see, we're recovering the profile. Now I'll pretend that when we're level off, so bear in mind that you have to use vertical speed if this increases 2000. At 1 to go, I will go at 1,000 feet a minute. And as we showed you before, I'm going to reduce the airspeed. We don't want to put any thrust, so I'm going to go vertical speed. I'm going to reduce the speed, and then I'm going to put 1,000 feet a minute. Speed brake is still out. Until when? Until basically the thrust comes in. We want the speed brake because we don't want to run too many track miles with this speed. We want to get the speed back. So now ATC, it's very interesting today. They tell me fly direct to Echo 502, descend to 2,700 feet, and you're clear for the approach. So are we high or are we low? This is a shortcut, guys. So a shortcut means that we are high. By how much? We have 18 miles if we execute this point. 6 by 3 is 18. So at 6,000 we need to have 18. We already have 18 now. So we set 2,700, we go level change, we put 220 knots, and we start the various steps for the intercepting GLIDESLOPE from above. Now execute. So we're gonna put flaps 1. I'm gonna put flaps 5 as well. And then assess again the situation. I'm still quite high. I have 14 miles to run. Multiply by 3. We're still too high. 15, basically 16 plus 2. We have 14. We're still too high. So we reduce the speed and we're gonna action the third part. So the first part is 250 speed brake to recover the path. The second part, second step is 220 flaps 5. And the third one is flaps 10, 180 knots. Of course, the pilot monitoring will have the VSD on his side to assess you with your situation. As you can see, we're high. By wear level change, the speed brake is out. We assess our distance. So we're at 10 miles now, we need to be 3,300 feet because 10 by 3, what is the number that multiplied by 3 gives you 10? It's 3.3, so 3,300 feet. At this stage, 10 miles, I need to be 3,300, so I am 1,000 feet high. So now that I have the correct sensing, but not yet within 1 dot, I cannot warlock. The warlock must be captured before we arm the approach. Next step, we put 1,000 feet airdrome elevation. So in Cagliari we can put 1,100 feet. And again assessing the situation. The GLIDESLOPE is coming. As we can see, we're going to intercept it before this white bug here. It's the 1,000 feet. And we must intercept it in VMC, like today's case, by 4 miles. So now that we're within 1 dot, I can arm the approach. And once I've got the GLIDESLOPE capture, we're going to stow the speed brake, which is now stow the speed brake and match the speed. And misapproach altitude will be 5,000 feet and it's going to be set in the MCP. So that's it, guys. Ciao.